Hi everyone, John at BauhausPerformance. Today we're going to go over how to get faster on your first track days. This will be helpful for first-time drivers, and maybe some people who have been to a few track days but are kind of hit kind of a plateau in terms of their pace. These are a few tips to improve your time, get a little faster, be more consistent, and that's what we're all out there to do is to have fun, get faster, be the fastest person on track. So hopefully this will help you with some tips to move you up in the order in terms of your pace. So let's get into it. The sections that we'll go over today, first one is going to be whether it's the car or the driver that's holding our pace back. We'll talk about smoothness over aggression when it comes to driving on track, braking later and carrying more speed, throttle control and weight transfer, and analyzing your laps to find that time that's missing. So there will be timestamps in the video and in the description, so feel free to jump around to whatever's relevant for you. So car or driver, let's talk about what's the limiting factor here. So for me and some of the people that I've driven with, some of us here at Bauhaus Performance, it's been helpful for us to analyze whether the car is the limiting factor that's making so we can't achieve a faster lap time, or if it's us in the driver's seat that's causing us to not be able to achieve a faster lap time. Most of the time, it's going to be the driver. However, there are some times where it is the car, and being able to analyze whether the car is really the limiting factor. You have reached kind of the top echelon of what you can get out of the car. That's going to be more for advanced drivers. So I'm going to focus more on drivers for this, but it could apply to the car too, and there will be some tips in here to analyze whether it is in fact the car. For the driver, one of the first things that I wanted to talk about was thinking of your car as a tool. This has been tremendously important for us here at Bauhaus Performance, is not thinking of the car as one of us or a baby or something like that. You don't want to baby the car, right? Or you're not going to be fast. Your car is a tool to enable you to be as fast as you can be on track, right? So if you're constantly babying the car, not pulling hard in the corners, not braking hard, not three-quarter throttling it, something like that, you're not going to achieve the maximum pace that you can get out of the car, which is your goal in motorsports, right? So you need to think about the car as a tool to enable you to reach your potential, and wear and tear on the vehicle is just a function of that. It can be really hard when it is, your daily driver or something like that. Obviously, you care a lot about it, and you have, financial stake most of the time in the actual vehicle. But you really can't think about it like that if you're going to achieve the maximum amount out of the vehicle. It's just you need to think of it as an object that you are going to drive, and you're going to drive it hard because that's how you get the maximum pace out of the vehicle. It's a hard mentality to kind of get out of because obviously, for most of us, we care a lot about cars, right? And things like that, but it's not how you're going to be able to get the maximum pace out of the vehicle. Mental limits is kind of along those same lines, right? So it kind of goes alongside thinking of your car as a tool. Mental limits is when I say mental limits, I think about, you know, going 80 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, really hard into the braking zone, braking really hard, right? Kind of that fear factor, breaking through that fear factor to really push the vehicle to its limit as opposed to your limit, right? What you want to do is maximize the vehicle. You are there to maximize the vehicle as opposed to, fighting through, the fear, I guess you would say, right? And it's a constant battle, right? Especially as you move up, right, to faster and faster vehicles, that's going to get more and more challenging. However, it's something that, determines what's a good driver and who's a great driver, right? Is who's able to, obviously maximize the vehicle. And to do that, you do have to break through those mental limits about, pulling hard in the corners, braking late, not getting freaked out by the acceleration, things like that. So, try to, as much as you can, obviously it's difficult, but break through those mental limits to try to, go hard into the corners, and really push the car to its potential. Alongside those, I'm not talking about skill here, right? Skill will come, right? But the next thing would be fitness and stamina. That's been tremendously helpful for me and for the other people here at Bauhaus Performance is, improving their fitness and stamina. What it helps us to do is not have to worry about or not have to, I guess, feel as much pulling in the corners, as much deceleration, acceleration, not have that wear and tear on the body. Obviously, when you're braking hard, you have some nice, a firm brake pedal. Maybe you don't have a booster or something like that. There's a lot of load there, so that can be physically demanding. Being able to have the physical resolve to feel those forces and apply those forces that are needed, right? Like hard braking, allows you to not have to think so much about the physical strain and think more about what's your next move, what is the car doing, things like that. So I would encourage you all to, even if it's little stuff like cardio, some light physical training, that can be really helpful for not thinking about that when you're driving the car, as opposed to just letting it happen, not have that be kind of in the forefront of your mind. Allow more of your mental capacity to be focused on driving the car as opposed to what is physically happening to you and what you're physically resisting in order to, achieve what you need to achieve on track. Those are the main things with the driver. However, at the end of the day, it's going to be skill, and that's skill that you will need to learn. Another thing that would be helpful would be getting in a simulator or something like that. If you do have the resources to do that at home, to build something like that, that would be something that I would encourage. But if you don't have that capability, right, these are the things that I'm going to be focusing on track to make sure that I am not the limiting factor, that the vehicle is what's limiting me. As for the vehicle, the main thing is going to be your tires and the grip that you achieve through those tires, right? So, if you have some really old, worn tires, that's going to limit you on track. The tires should be the only thing in contact between your entire vehicle and the actual racing surface. So you need to make sure that those tires are optimal so that you can achieve the optimal, grip with the vehicle, right? So that can be, obviously those are consumable in motorsports. So those are going to be the things that your tires and the grip that you can achieve out of those tires, right? Depending on compound and thing like that, is something that you'll need to have in the forefront of your mind and seeing if that is limiting you as opposed to yourself or some other part of the vehicle, right? Same thing applies to your brakes, right? If your brakes are overheating, if you're not getting the bite that you need on the brake pedal, they're kind of more street brakes, consider potentially moving your brakes up to, a more race specification. Not a big deal to, have your race brakes and your street brakes if it is your street car. Those are typically pretty easy to swap out. So, and you can just, when you're ready to go to the track or when you get to the track, you drive your car to the track, throw your race brakes on, use your race brakes, and then pull them off and drive home, right? Not a big deal there. But that can be a limiting factor, right? Especially if they're overheating, you're going to get a lot of brake fade and you're not really going to be able to push the car for certainly long periods of time, but if it's really bad, even around a singular lap, it might get more challenging. And then third on the car, obviously your car, there's a million things that can limit you. But the third that I wanted to cover was your suspension, right? So if you are riding on stock suspension or maybe some cheap coilovers or something like that, consider upgrading. It does make a huge difference in your ability to pull in the corners and to brake and things like that. It's going to align with all your weight transfer. So consider a suspension upgrade if you do feel like that. Your grip is covered, your tires, you have brand new tires, but you're not getting the grip that you need. Consider a suspension upgrade to hopefully alleviate some of that. However, most of the time, like I said in the beginning, it's not going to be the car that's the limiting factor. All of these three things will get you more lap time, as long as you're buying the right parts and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's only going to get you so far if you are a concerned driver. You're driving not even close to the limit. You're driving 70%, 60% of what the car can achieve. These are only going to take you so far. So keep that in mind. So let's move on to smoothness versus aggression. This is going to get more technical, so be prepared for that. But the first thing that we want to cover is unsettling the car. If you're unsettling the car during braking, during turn-in, during tracking out, for in acceleration, what you're doing is you're moving that your suspension and where your grip is all across the car very quickly, and your tires are not going to be able to accommodate for that. So keep that in mind that you're going to want to be as smooth as you can. The slowest cars are usually, or the slowest looking cars are the ones that go the fastest, and the ones that look like they're, really fighting the car and going crazy are usually going to be the slowest cars. So just keep that in mind, that you want to be smooth with all your inputs. Every input that you're doing on the car, you want to be smooth, because that's going to transition your suspension and your tires to give you the maximum amount of grip, right? If you're really jerking the wheel hard, what you're going to end up doing is overloading the outside wheel. You're not going to get a good bite on your turn in or on your tracking out or on the apex. When you're, fluttering kind of the throttle, right? Going back and forth on the throttle, what it's going to lead to is this suspension is going to be loading the front, loading the rear, loading the front again, loading the rear, and you're not going to be able to get the grip that you're looking for. And then same thing with the brakes, right? You're going to be, if you're really heavily, I guess you would say, modulating that throttle, or modulating that brake, right? Braking really hard, lifting up, dropping the brake again. What it's going to lead to is, especially on turn-in, you're braking really hard. All the weight is going to be on your front tires, and then when you let off, you're going to the nose of the car is going to pop up. So you're going to lose grip on those front tires, right? So what you need to do is smoothly transition, right? Hard on the brakes, and then gently lifting up to the point where you have enough grip on those front tires to turn in. You're maximizing those front tires, and then once you get into the corner, then you want to be at a point where you're completely off the brakes, right? And then you're slowly getting on the throttle to move it back towards the rear. Alongside that is going to be a gradual turn-in. That can be really difficult for folks to get used to. That's something that I've struggled with in the past. Is I want to kind of have a car that is really hard on the nose, and I can just basically flick it into the corner. But that's not always the fastest, right? If you're cutting really hard into the apex, what you're going to do is you're going to lose a ton of speed on the apex, because you're losing that nice arc that you get from maintaining speed by having a nice long arc during turn-in, right? So if you're diving into the corner, right, by turning really sharply in, you're going to be really slow on the apex, and you're not going to carry as much speed into the corner, okay? Same thing applies to lockups, right? So if you're diving really heavy on the brake pedal, you're going to lock up your tires. So what I like to do is kind of have a smooth transition, not too smooth, right? But a smooth transition to exactly where I want to be on the brakes. And then you modulate based off how much grip you have, right? So if you can feel those tires starting to, under rotate, you want to have a little bit of under rotation. But if they start to, obviously lock up, you need to jump off and then try to get back in so you can find where exactly you can brake without locking up. Rolling the throttle is going to be the same thing. So again, you want to roll onto your throttle. If you're looking at your curve, you want to have your throttle curve, you want to have a nice smooth transition on the throttle. You don't want to be jumping up all over the place, right? So roll into the throttle, be really nice on it. If you are in a slower car or a low horsepower car like myself, you can probably be pretty more more aggressive, right? But you still want to be smooth in that transition. You don't want to just immediately, mash the throttle, because again, all the weight is going to go back towards the rear. You're not going to have any front end control, and you could overload those rear tires. So keep that in mind too. Balanced transition. So you want to make sure that in the case of a chicane or something like that, you can toss the car. You can toss the car in your transition, right? So if it's a right hand corner and then a left hand corner, you can toss the car into the right and then again toss it back left. But the thing that you need to keep in mind is, again, what is the weight transfer going to be doing? Your weight's going to be loading up, in the case of a right hand turn, it's going to be loading up that driver's side tires, and then you're going to be loading up your passenger tires when you transition to the left hand corner, right? So keep that in mind and try to be balanced with it. Obviously, you still need to get into the other corner, the left hand corner, but try to have some flow to it, right? As opposed to just jerking the wheel, because you're going to lose that front end grip and that front end bite if you immediately transition and overload and basically understeer, not hit the apex, right? Finally, you want to flow with the car. You don't want to fight it, right? So you and the car need to complement each other. You don't want to, be fighting each other, where you're constantly just ragging on the car. You want to be hard on it, of course, but you don't want to be fighting the car, overloading every tire at every moment. That's not fast. You want to be at the point where you're 99% of the tire, you're utilizing every part of the tire, but not going above that 100%, hitting the 110%. You're going to end up understeering, oversteering. It's going to get squirrely, right? You want to complement the vehicle, flow with the car, feel what the car is telling you, and you'll achieve some better lap times there. Next, let's go over braking later and carrying more speed safely. Consistent braking is going to be important, right? Are you able to hit that mark that you've set out every single time? Or, most of the time you're able to hit that mark, you're not locking up, things are feeling good, right? What you want to do is start moving that braking point very slowly, right, and gradually. Things are looking good at the 20-yard board. Let's try 19. Let's try 18, right? Slowly just add a few yards to your braking point, see how it feels, and you'll get to the point where if you're doing that across the lap, you will find where the maximum is for your vehicle, and you can dial in exactly where you need to brake. Now, the thing that you need to keep in mind, right, is you kind of want to make those changes in corners that don't complement each other, right? So if I have a long straight, we have a corner before the long straight and we have a corner after, right? What we don't want to do is do this on the corner that the corner that is before the long straight, because if we do that, we carry more speed through the corner. We're going to find that at the end of the straight, we're going to be at a higher speed going into the next braking point. So if you do that and then try to move your braking point further, you could end up in a more dangerous situation where you're locking up, you don't have enough speed to stop, right? So start out with some corners that are kind of, every other corner, something like that, right? Where you can isolate the corner to find where it's going to work for those, and then the next session you go out and you do the same thing for the other corners, right? And you find that breaking point for those corners, right? You also want to use more of the track. So what I mean by that is when you are getting on the braking in the braking zone, what you don't want to do is actually end up walking into the corner. That can be really something that's really tempting to do, because you might get to those mental limits where you feel a little bit scared and you want to make sure that you're actually going to be able to get into the corner. What you want to do is brake. Obviously, they'll teach us this day one is brake in a straight line. But what you also want to do is maximize the track. So get that tire right off the white line on the outside and brake hard. Depending on the car, you could even be on the curbing, right? Or be on that white line is, break in a straight line and then focus on, again, that turning in that car to maximize that arc, right? That's going to enable you to really open up the corner, because if you're creeping into the corner, you're going to have a much slower turn in speed, apex speed, because now you've shrunk that corner down to a smaller corner. But if you keep it open by staying on the outside of the track and then coming in, you're going to maximize your braking potential and your turn in potential. We talked about this a little bit in the last slide, but threshold braking is important as well, right? So what we want to do is get on, be maximizing those front tires to make sure that we're braking hard, right? And get up to the 99%, make sure everything's feeling good. If you over exceed or you under exceed, right? You're too low, you're at 80%, modulate that brake pedal to bring it up to 99. You go too far, all right, drop it back and then bring it back up to where you can find exactly where the tires are going to not fail, but you're going to end up locking up or hitting some sort of limit. Trust the grip. Again, this kind of goes back to the car versus driver section, but you want to trust that your tires are going to be able to have the same grip. They may not, but have a similar grip the last time you were out, right? So trust that you have grip and that you're going to be able to stop, and that will kind of get you over that mental barrier of braking deeper into the corner. Next is throttle control and weight transfer. First thing is going to be being smooth, right? Don't flutter that throttle. Get a smooth, nice throttle input. So when you are tracking out, you're not going to get loose, and you're not going to, potentially move that balance from the front to the rear, to the front to the rear. That's going to be really important. Understand the implications of your input, right? Again, when you get on the throttle, all of that weight is going to get headed towards the rear. So what's going to happen is you're going to lose that front traction, because all the weight, or not all the weight, but most of the weight is going to be headed towards the rear of the vehicle. So you're not going to get the same bite out of the front tires that you would out of when you're in the braking zone and you have a lot more weight on the front tires, right? So your wheel is going to be, you're not going to be able to turn in, or when you're tracking out, you're not going to be able to turn as much out of the corner as you did when you came into the corner, right? So understand the implications of your inputs, be smooth, and that will alleviate some of that difficulty in tracking out if you're having difficulties there. When I'm talking about pedal steering, that's what I mean in terms of the implications of the inputs, right? So when I am braking, all the weight's going in the front. I have a nice bite on my front tires where I can turn, assuming they're not overloaded. When I'm tracking out of the corner, all the weight's going to be going to the rear, so I'm going to have a lot less on those front tires, right? So you can use that to your advantage, right? So there's the concept of trail braking, where what you want to do is you want to brake hard, ease up as you're turning in, so that you have all that, you're maximizing your tires when you're actually turning the vehicle as opposed to braking now. When you're at your hardest turn point, which is going to be at the apex, you're going to be off both your brake and your throttle, and then as you're coming out, you want to get on the throttle, and you're going to lose some of that front traction. So you're going to let the car, alleviate the steering wheel, and let the car move you to the outside of the corner as much as you can, right? And that's all done through the pedals, right? You're not, there will be steering input, but leveraging the pedals to do some of the steering can be really helpful in, again, managing your weight transfer, in finding that lap time, right? Maximizing your tires through your pedal steering. And then finally here would be using weight transfer to your advantage. So one of the things that can be really helpful is, you have a long right that you need to get into the corner. What you can do is, if you're, taking a lot of speed in, and you're at the top of your gear, shift up at that point. And what that'll do is that'll, again, since you're on your throttle hard, the weight's all going to be in the back. When you let off the throttle to change gear, it's going to move the weight to kind of a neutral position where you're going to have a lot more bite on those front tires, where you're going to have a little bit more steering input. So you can then, during or a little bit after your gear change, you can go ahead and start moving towards a turn-in point, right? So you can use the gears as well because they're going to have the same impact, right? When you change gears, the car is going to go more towards a neutral position. So you can use that to your advantage to get a little bit more bite on your front tires. So definitely use that. Next, let's talk about analyzing your laps to find some free time. So what I would say is don't fixate on the fastest time. Focus more on your average time, your average clean time, right? So if you're getting passed or or if you are passing, don't focus, from a total lap perspective on those, but focus on kind of your average, right? And you can look at the best versus your average then, right? So, okay, what am I doing on my average that is limiting my time versus my fastest time? So you can identify, okay, I'm braking later on my best time versus my average. Okay, there's a little bit of a change here, right? I have more speed coming out of this corner. Try to identify where you're losing time on your average and work towards that best time. Ideally, what you could do is have the instructor actually do a few laps in your car, and that will allow you to look at what are they doing that's different from what I'm doing, and to utilize their time to see where you can find time, right? So, okay, they're taking this particular corner in a different gear. They're braking, deeper into this corner. They have more speed coming out of that corner. What are they doing that I can then apply to myself to, close that gap between their time and my time? To do that, it can be helpful to break the lap or corner into sections. So personally, I like to break it into a corner by corner section. That way you can see exactly each one of the inputs. If you're looking at the entire lap, for an example, on this particular slide, we have an entire lap showing here. I would really break it down right into the actual corner itself to see where you can find time. Because if you're looking at this, you're looking at all your different inputs, your speed. It's going to be really hard to find the actual time that you can gain. But if you break it down into, okay, let's look at corner 5 and see, okay, on my best lap, I'm braking way later and way harder. Let me try to apply that on a more consistent basis so that my average now has that time. Okay, that looks good. Now let's move to a different corner. Let's move to corner 8 and see how I do there, right? Breaking it down to little chunks is going to make it more digestible. One thing that people kind of neglect when it comes to that can be the apex speed. So your apex speed is usually going to be your lowest speed. So maximizing your lowest speed obviously is going to give you a faster average lap time. So, look at the apex speed and see, okay, on my best lap, am I really maintaining a good apex speed? And hit a goal, right? So, on my best, I'm looking at about 65, and at my, on my average, I'm looking at closer to 55. Okay, so for the next session, let me try to hit 60 on this apex and, consistently and see if I can gain time there, which you definitely will, obviously, but, try to make those little adjustments where you can, throughout the session, focus on a particular corner and maximize that apex speed, because that's going to bring your average lap time up with it. And then finally, make adjustments and review. So in between sessions, you usually have an hour, 2 hours where you have some downtime. Take a look at your data, break down a couple corners and see, what can you do to adjust what you're doing versus your best. You're looking at your best versus your average to see, okay, for the next session, give yourself some goals, right? So improve my apex speed in 5, brake harder into 8, things like that. That's going to move and train yourself to, try to find more time, and maximize your track time really. So if you're just going out and you're driving and you don't have necessarily a goal, you're going to be in that plateau for a good amount of time, right? So go into each session with a plan to try to maximize something from the last session. Final thoughts. Change and experiment. That's going to be the only way that you're going to be able to gain time. If you're just doing the same thing every session, then you're going to be having the same lap times for every session, right? Nothing's going to change unless you're the one that actually makes the change and makes it happen. Use all the tools in your toolbox. Get, a timing device or, even something on your phone to be able to look at your lap time, right? And make the changes as needed. Motorsports requires both mental and physical rigor. So if you're not, pushing yourself as much as you're pushing the car, then you're not going to find the lap time. You need to stay focused, right? And, potentially add some physical fitness to your plan to try to get better so that you have more mental capacity when you're driving to focus on actually improving your lap time. All of that is going to be really critical to your success. So, you're training your mind to be faster. Focus on your physical as well. That can be really helpful. I hope this video was helpful. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll definitely respond. If the video was helpful, we do appreciate it if you like and subscribe. And then if you do have any other further questions, feel free to contact us. Our email is below, and then that's our contact information on Instagram as well. So I hope this was helpful. Again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. But if not, have fun on track, and hopefully you gain some lap time out there. All right. Thanks, y'all.